For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind by the will of the gods and master of 1,000,000 worlds by the might of his inexhaustible armies. He is a rotting carcass writhing invisibly with power from the dark age of technology. He is the carrion lord of the Imperium, for whom 1,000 souls die every day, for whom blood is drunk and flesh eaten. Human blood and human flesh, the stuff of which the Imperium is made. To be a man in such times is to be the one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. This is a tale of those times.
The Horus Heresy. The very name sends shivers down the spine of the Warhammer 40K verse. It was a cataclysmic civil war that nearly brought the Imperium of Man to its knees, forever scarring the galaxy and shaping the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. At its heart lies the tragic betrayal of Horus, the Emperor's most favoured son, and the fall of half the Space Marine legions to the insidious influence of chaos. But a question lingers, a question that has fueled countless debates and theories. Did the Emperor, with his immense psychic power and supposed prescience, know the Horus Heresy was coming? Was the galaxy-spanning conflict an unavoidable destiny, woven into the very fabric of reality? To even begin to unpack this complex question, we must first acknowledge the limitations inherent in our understanding of the Emperor. He remains an enigma, a being whose motives and thoughts are shrouded in mystery. Accounts of his actions and pronouncements are filtered through the lens of biased perspectives, unreliable narrators, and the ever-present fog of propaganda. The truth, as always in the Warhammer 40K verse, is fragmented and contradictory. However, by carefully examining the existing lore and piecing together the available information, we can delve into the details of the Emperor's actions, his pronouncements, and the circumstances surrounding the heresy to attempt to answer this enduring question. Greetings all, I'm your guide, the Archivist. Today I will dive into if the Emperor knew the Horus Heresy was going to happen. Before we begin, please make sure to like the like and subscribe waypoints, or join to become an acolyte down below, so that more people can learn from the archives. One of the strongest arguments for the Emperor's foresight centers on his profound psychic ability. He is without a doubt the most powerful psychic in the galaxy, capable of feats that dwarf even the most accomplished psykers of the Eldar. With such immense power at his disposal, it seems logical to assume the Emperor possessed some degree of precognition, the ability to perceive potential futures. Indeed, there are hints throughout the lore that suggest the Emperor was not entirely blind to the dangers lurking ahead. He understood the corrupting influence of chaos, having battled it for millennia. He actively sought to shield humanity from its grasp, implementing the imperial truth to suppress religious belief and actively purging any hint of chaos worship. His creation of the Space Marines, superhuman warriors designed to be immune to corruption, could also be interpreted as a preemptive measure against the insidious forces of the warp. Furthermore, the Emperor's own words, as interpreted through various sources, often spoke of a coming darkness, a time of trial and tribulation that humanity would have to endure. These pronouncements, while often cryptic and veiled in allegory, could be interpreted as warnings about the impending heresy. However, the argument for the Emperor's complete awareness for the Horus Heresy crumbles under closer scrutiny. If the Emperor knew with absolute certainty that Horus would betray him, why did he place so much trust and authority in his favoured son? Why did he name Horus War Master, effectively granting him control over the entire Imperium's military might? It seems illogical to arm one's own executioner with the very weapon that would be used to strike the fatal blow. Another significant point to consider is the nature of precognition within the Warhammer 40K verse. It is rarely depicted as a clear and unwavering vision of the future. Instead, it is often portrayed as a swirling vortex of possibilities, a kaleidoscope of potential outcomes that shift and change based on the actions of individuals and the ebb and flow of fate. Even the Eldar, renowned for their prophetic abilities, are often misled by their visions, their attempts to avert disaster often leading to unintended consequences. Therefore, it is more likely that the Emperor possessed a potential awareness for the heresy, a looming shadow on the horizon of possible futures. He might have seen the seductive whispers of chaos reaching Horus, the growing resentment simmering within the Primarchs, and the inherent flaws within the Imperium himself. He might have recognized the possibility of a catastrophic civil war, but not necessarily the certainty of it. This nuanced interpretation aligns more closely with the themes of tragedy. And free will that are prevalent throughout the Warhammer 40K verse. The Emperor, despite his immense power, was not omnipotent. He could not control the destinies of his sons, nor could he completely eradicate the threat of chaos. The Horus Heresy was not a preordained event, but rather the result of a series of choices, betrayals, and ultimately failures. The actions of Erebus and Cor Pharaon, the insidious agents of chaos who manipulated Horus and sowed seeds of doubt within his heart, played a crucial role in the heresy's unfolding. The Emperor, focused on the Great Crusade and the advancement of humanity, may have underestimated the cunning and tenacity of these chaos cultists, failing to recognize the danger they posed until it was too late. Furthermore, the Emperor's own flaws and failings might have contributed to the heresy. His aloofness, his reluctance to connect with his sons on a personal level, and his insistence on the imperial truth, which denied the existence of gods and the power of faith, created an environment ripe for discontent and rebellion. The Primarchs, created as tools of war rather than sons, felt alienated and unappreciated, their emotional needs unmet. This emotional void made them vulnerable to the whispers of chaos, who offered them power, recognition, and a sense of belonging. The details surrounding the Council of Nicaea also paint a picture of an emperor struggling to control the unpredictable forces of the warp. The edict he issued forbidding the use of psychic powers, while intended to protect humanity from the dangers of uncontrolled psychic phenomena and the predations of chaos, inadvertently stifled the development of beneficial psychic ability and further alienated those Primarchs who relied on their psychic powers. The only truth that can be discerned is that the Emperor of Man, as always, remains an unknowable figure, and whilst many of his motivations can be speculated at, his true goals have always been largely a mystery to the annals of history. The first school of thought surrounding the Emperor is that whilst he was and still is an incredibly powerful psychic being, and did have some elements of foresight, he did not foresee the Horus Heresy, or at least in the extent that it occurred. We know that the Emperor was capable of foreseeing some events or potential strings of events that came to be or could happen, but some argue that he could never truly grasp or control the fates of others, especially his demigod Primarch sons. Ultimately, even if he knew what was going to happen, could he have changed the outcome? Many argue that no matter his intervention, the Horus Heresy would have happened one way or another. The second school of thought, however, suggests otherwise. Whilst the Emperor of Mankind may not have been able to see the future, there were many potential warning signs throughout the Great Crusade and the build-up to the heresy that showed that something could have gone terribly wrong, and the Emperor seemingly overlooked all of this in favour of dividing his attention elsewhere to his Webway project. His lack of understanding about the true motivations and personalities of his sons, despite embodying aspects of himself, is a troubling conclusion to make. Surely the Emperor must have known that crushing Lorgar's religious zeal, banning Magnus's magical devotion, overlooking Perturabo's immense contribution, or handing almost absolute power to a prideful Horus would have ended in disaster. Considering the Emperor's immense power and knowledge, it almost seems impossible to assume that he didn't know what the outcome of these events would be in the end. This then leads to a heretical but logical conclusion. Did the Emperor want the heresy to happen? He now has sat upon the Golden Throne for 10,000 years, fueled by the power of thousands of psycho-sacrifices per day, tending to his Astronomicon while holding his favourite project, the Webway Gate on Terra, closed. The entire heresy could be drawn back to the inevitable choice where the Emperor left the Great Crusade to return and focus on the Webway. Was this his grand plan all along? In conclusion, the question of whether the Emperor knew the Horus Heresy was going to happen is not easily answered. While he undoubtedly possessed some degree of precognition and likely sensed the potential for a catastrophic event, it is unlikely that he possessed a complete and unwavering vision of the future. The Horus Heresy was not a preordained destiny, but rather the result of a complex interplay of factors, including the machinations of chaos, the Emperor's own flaws, and the choices made by the Primarchs themselves. The Emperor likely saw the possibility of the heresy, a dark shadow lurking in the swirling vortex of potential futures. However, he underestimated the cunning of chaos, the vulnerabilities of his sons, and the inherent flaws within the Imperium he had built. Ultimately, the tragedy of the Horus Heresy serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most powerful beings are not immune to the forces of fate and the consequences of their own actions. It highlights the enduring themes of free will, betrayal, and the seductive power of chaos that continue to shape the grim darkness of the Warhammer 40K verse. The details of the heresy and the question of the Emperor's foresight continue to be debated and analysed, adding the layers of complexity and intrigue to this iconic science fiction setting. And so I have now covered the content for this video, but if there's anything that has been missed, please share them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like the like and subscribe waypoints, or join to become an acolyte down below so that more people can learn from the archives.
In the grim dark of the far future, there is only war.